So I'm Brandon. You know that.
Hi, Brandon.
You're Beth, but you know what? It says Beth, but I happen to know that's not your real name.
You know my real name?
I know your real name.
Very few people know my real name.
Real name.
And very few
it's kind
pastors.
of a famous.
Yeah, and very few pastors can pronounce my real name correctly.
I probably can't, but I'll try. Bethlehem.
Yes, you did.
Ah!
Bethlehem.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
But pastors want to say Bethlehem. There's no A in Bethlehem.
Yeah, there was no A in that town. In fact,
Yeah.
I think we're completely butchering the way that town
Oh,
was.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Because have you watched, have you seen The Passion?
Yes.
It came out years ago.
Yes.
I always thought Peter's name was Peter. And when it was in the Greek, I thought it was Cephas. Apparently, it's Kepha.
Kepha.
Kepha. That's how.
Who knew?
That's how that Jesus pronounced it, and apparently they did a lot of studies. So
there's two people who call me by my real name: my husband and Don Dietrich.
and do they do it out of spite or just?
No, it's just fun.
Okay.
I think they just like to call me by my full name.
Is it hard to introduce yourself? Do you ever introduce yourself as Bethlehem?
No.
No. The people just
too
wouldn't get it.
complicated.
What were your parents thinking? Were they hippies or something?
They were in a cult, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
Jesus freaks.
those. Yeah, man. I just saw that. What was that movie? Not Jesus Freaks. Jesus
Revolution.
Yeah. Were they in that?
I've seen it 3 times. Yeah.
Okay. So you're a church planter.
Right.
What is the difference between a church planter and a pastor?
Well, it's a both and, right? Pastors plant churches and church planters need pastors. So it's two sides of the same coin. We need pastors to plant churches. It's the most effective way to reach people far from God.
So do you consider yourself a pastor, or do you consider yourself
both?
You're both. Both and.
Yeah, both and.
Do you get any pushback, any flack for that? Here's a female pastor.
Yeah. Here's the deal. In our traditional churches, yes. In a church plant where we are reaching a community with 135 different nationalities represented in Federal Way, Washington, people are just desperate for Jesus. So anybody with a religious background might give some pushback, but I have not once had a challenge in my church because people who are coming, they just want Jesus. Yeah.
So while the lost world is focusing on, hey, I'm lost, I need to be found.
Right.
The traditional church, and when you say traditional church, are you including the assemblies in that?
Yeah. Anybody with any type of religious background, that question comes up, women in ministry question. But for those who are far from God, we see women in leadership at every level of our society, right? And women CEOs, and so those people, they walk in and it's very natural to have a woman pastor. So
somebody that's drowning doesn't really care who throws the lifeline.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So with that in mind, what advice would you have for young women that are thinking, I think I'm feeling a call to ministry, but I'm not really feeling called to get married. I'm just not. What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, I give the same advice that I would any man. Follow the call of God, no matter what it is. Okay. Don't get distracted.
So really get your eyes off the gender thing.
I have a call, not a cause, right?
Ooh, that's good. A call, not a cause. Okay, so let's move on a little bit. You mentioned 135 different ethnic backgrounds. Yeah,
so our school district in Federal Way is the most ethnically diverse school district in the whole state of Washington. And get this, we are 5 in the whole nation. And so it's one of the most diverse zip codes anywhere. I'm the minority in my church. We're reaching people from all different countries, lots of immigrants. We have homeless coming to our church. We have lots of young professionals, some retired families. So it looks like a little piece of heaven. I think when we get to heaven, that's what it's going to look like.
Oh, you can actually lead worship and play drums at the same time?
Yes. So Greg and I, we've been a part of planting, I think, 5 different churches: Minneapolis, Harlem, New York, Seattle, now Federal Way.
All big cities.
Chicago.
What is it about big cities?
I don't know. Yeah, just that's where people need Jesus, right?
And need Jesus in small towns.
Yeah. So we were at a church service that we were in Harlem actually one morning, and our drummer canceled. And we were like, what are we going to do? And everybody said, well, we're just going to have to do unplugged acoustic. And I was like, no, I had played drums in high school. So I sat down at the drum set and I told my husband, I said, get me a boom mic. And it was like the spirit of Karen Carpenter just fell. I didn't know I could do this. People are like, who's Karen Carpenter? I didn't know I could play drums and sing and lead worship at the same time until I had to. So that's a whole different sermon right there. Sometimes you don't know what you got until you're in the situation and God gives it to you. So yeah, it's a fun fact.
You like Ann Wilson?
Yeah.
I got
remember.
a song, I think.
Barracuda. Didn't she do Barracuda?
Yeah, I think she did. Now you can air drum.
That reminds me, that reminds me of, high school days.
You're getting away. You and Greg have an opportunity to get away.
Oh my goodness.
What are you going to do?
Take me to the beach. Take me anywhere, a lake, a body of water, somewhere, and give me a good book. Like, I love to read. I love historical fiction, all the leadership things.
Really?
But yeah, I love to read and eat chocolate.
So you've planted 5 different churches?
I've been a part of 5 different church teams. This is the first one I've been a lead pastor of, and we're coming up on 2 years. This April, it'll be 2 years. We've reached over 4,000 people. We have different events. We do a monthly outreach event every single month. And we've seen some pretty amazing stories of people who would never walk into a traditional church, but we're in the mall.
Right.
So you walk in the mall and there's Dick's Sporting Goods, and then there's us right across the hallway.
I wonder how many husbands you get in because they spent too much over there and they're going to go pray that
Right.
their wife.
We found one of our pastors that way. Actually, our pastor of spiritual formation pastor, she was in buying a pair of Nikes and heard the worship music and had been praying for God to lead her to a new church after COVID and all of that. A lot of churches closed. And she came over, heard the music, and now she's our spiritual formation pastor.
Wow. So you're in the mall. It's called the Commons now?
The Commons Mall.
When I was growing up, it was SeaTac Mall.
Right.
We used to cruise the mall, and go watch movies and go to the arcade. Mm-hmm.
We are in the old arcade.
Serious?
So we decided, it was December 2021, didn't know where we were going to plant. All of the regular places that church plants go were closed because of COVID. So movie theaters wouldn't let churches in, schools, community centers. So I'd take my husband and my family, I said, let's go to the movies at the mall, but let's go an hour early and just walk the mall and pray. And let's ask God where he wants us to meet. So we walk the mall and pray, and we get to the end of the mall by Dick's Sporting Goods, and I see these 2 spaces side by side for lease. And immediately my pastor brain goes off. I'm like, one side could be kids ministry, the other side, we could turn that into a sanctuary. It was the old arcades. It was a hot mess, right? Called the manager, and here we are today. We flipped that space, and it looks amazing. And you helped build our stage.
So I don't think I've ever heard of a church being planted in a mall before.
Yeah.
There
have been a few.
Are you like the first?
No. Luis and Ruth Solero had a church in the mall for several years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I just don't pay
attention.
attention.
They're the trailblazers, yeah.
Maybe I don't pay attention. So, okay, going into a new place like that, what's been the hardest thing about going in to a mall? And so what's been the toughest part about ministry in a mall, planting, all that?
Well, you have to get comfortable with chaos, because it's chaos every day.
Okay.
I mean, the first few months there, we witnessed, I think in 1 week, I witnessed 3 or 4 robberies. But there's lots of robberies, lots of distractions. People come in, because we're in the public, people come in constantly. I feel like a chaplain on a lot of days, because people come in, they want to know who we are, what we're doing. I end up praying with strangers, on a regular basis. We do events like we'll do our Fall Fest. We do events for the community, and we don't know if anybody's going to show up, and 750 people showed up. And we had the opportunity to share Jesus with people from all over the world. We have a woman coming to our church right now who's Hindu, who's not even a believer yet, but she loves our community, and she's coming faithfully, and she's curious about Jesus. We've given out over 500 backpacks. Well, this young woman who lived at the shelter down the street brought her 2 boys for backpacks. We met them. It was fun meeting them. We followed up with them like we do with everyone who comes to an event, invite her back to church. She comes, ends up giving her life to Jesus. I baptized her last November. Now she's serving on our team. She's out of the shelter, has her own space, and she says, it's all because I met Jesus here at the mall coming for a free backpack.
What would you say most difficult hurdle?
Yeah, I mean, you just get all types of people. To me, we have to adjust to mall hours, right? So sometimes I'd like to have later events. The mall closes a little bit earlier. We put in our worship. We have Spanish. We'll do a lot of Spanish worship, Swahili. We've done Samoan. We even did, I think, Japanese at one point. And so, just always being aware that there are people from all over coming to church. And is this message, what it does is it can be frustrating and a hurdle, but it makes you simplify the word so that anybody,
Well, and I love that because this has been one of my, pet peeves or whatever. I think we, whether I want to say we as Christians or we as church leaders or ministry or whatever, I think we have become so overeducated that we've lost the art of winging it.
Yeah.
You look through the book of Acts and it's winging it.
Yeah.
They're just learning as they go.
Yeah. And we are too. Like, we make up events to do. We do an event called Taste of the Nations. And why do we do that? I just want food from around the world, and I want people from all around the world to come and taste food. So we've done it for a few years. People from our church make the food. It's been incredible. We do a Juneteenth celebration,
Yeah.
We don't celebrate that in churches. Why don't we? It's a significant, celebration, especially in the African American community, should be for all of us, right? And so we just, every year there's something new that we try out. Some of them don't work well. We tried this charcuterie event, totally bombed. We're like, yep, take that off the list. No charcuterie, it doesn't work here.
Oh man, you would think food in any form would work, but maybe not. If you were not involved in ministry, if you weren't, Pastor Lord said, hey, thanks for everything you've done, but your time in ministry is done, of formal. You got my vote.
I love teaching. I'm an adjunct professor at Northwest University. I love training the next generation of pastors. And so I'll be teaching some more classes this fall in the College of Ministry at NU. So I do love teaching. My doctorate is in educational leadership, and so it's a EDD.
Cool.
So I do love teaching.
Very cool. And I'm just throwing this out. I got your update like last month or something, and you mentioned that you were starting a deaf church.
Yes. Can I tell you though, this was a 30-year dream come true.
That's awesome.
When I was at North Central, I felt a call they had the Deaf International Bible College there at the time, and I made several deaf friends, and I learned that the deaf community is one of the most unreached people groups in all of America. Did you know that?
I didn't know
The
that.
deaf community. There are thousands of deaf people in the Pacific Northwest and not enough churches for them. And so I knew 30 years ago that someday I was going to help start a deaf church, and reached out to my professor from 30 years ago. She happened to be back in the Pacific Northwest pastoring a deaf church. She says, we want to help plant a deaf church. So we partnered, Joanne Smith, Bethany Deaf Assembly, BDA, say that 10 times fast.
No, I will not.
Bethany Deaf Assembly and us here at the table. So once a month we have a deaf meetup at our church that we're believing is going to grow into a deaf ministry. I think we had 65 at the first one, and half of them were visitors, and one gave their life to Jesus for the first time.
That's
and Pastor
awesome.
Joanne led them to Jesus. So it's incredible.
That's really cool. I got it.
Do you have a table shirt on?
I've got a table shirt on.
All right, represent.
Yeah.
Nice being on the porch with you.
Yeah, well, thanks.